Thank you very much for coming today. My name is Reed Alley, and I'm the chairman of the board of directors of the Social Conservatives United movement. And we are concerned Canadians, correct?
Yep.
We are concerned Canadians. Today, I want to just give you a bit of a history of what has brought us to this point. I think that's important. The group of people who came together and eventually became the board of directors of Social Conservatives United here on Vancouver Island started out by intermittent discussions over coffee at Tim Hortons about the concerns of our country, the way things were going. And every time we met for coffee, we would be complaining about what we saw happening to our country. We discovered that most of us could be and eventually became known with each other as social conservatives. That has nothing to do with a political party. We are not a political party. We're a social action group. And what we believed were traditional approaches to social issues in our society. And so that's what brought us together initially. And then as we met more frequently, either one-on-one or in groups, it became apparent that we should just stop complaining and that we should start doing something about this. And so we decided that we would form a group and we would have an initial meeting. And this is the founding meeting of Social Conservatives United here on Vancouver Island. There are no other groups by that name in Canada at the moment, but what we found out in our social networking is that there are a lot of groups springing up across the country who have similar views as we do. And what it showed us was that we are really not alone. There are a lot more of us who think this way than perhaps any of us in this room have thought before. So what we need to do is to bring together people of like mind, traditional values, and give them support in their positions, and to suggest things that we can do together that it would be impossible for us to do on our own. And so that's why we have come together today, to hear from each other, to support each other, to recognize that we're a lot bigger than we think we are, and to somehow bring back hope to many millions of people across this country that their views are being heard, and in some way try to push back against this whole liberal ideology that's just suffocating our country and taking it in a very desperate and bad position. We came up with a mission statement for our group. We felt that was important. We've put it up here for you so that you can always be reminded of it as we go through the day. The purpose of Social Conservatives United is to defend and promote traditional values on current social issues. In so doing, we will equip others to counteract the prevailing liberalism, which intrudes upon and often overwhelms our basic rights and freedoms. So that's the purpose of Social Conservatives United. Now, even though we probably have broad agreement in this group on current social issues, we will not all agree. We know that. I have a large family. I have 8 kids and 14 grandchildren. It's one of the reasons I'm doing this. And when we all get together, we don't all agree, you know. But I think there's some broad consensus amongst us about what we believe and where we would like to see our country headed. So in our meeting today, I'm expecting that we will show respect for each other's positions, that we'll conduct ourselves responsibly, and we will let other people have an opportunity to share their views. In that, we hope that you will all respond to those who are moderating the meetings and respect their decisions on things. When we have question and answer periods, the mic there will be turned on and you can come and ask your question, and you'll get more specific directions from the moderator of the question and answer session after Faith Goldy speaks. Faith has had a very interesting trip getting out here. I had a frantic phone call last night at about 20 to 7 saying, look, we may be in trouble here. Faith's plane was late getting out of Toronto, and they're not sure she can meet her connection to come over to the island. Well, we brought some emergency help to bear on that, and fortunately prayers were answered, and she is here today, although a little bit late coming to this meeting, but I guess that's part of her life. We're glad that she's here. She's going to help us to take a look at the issues because of her national status, not only with Sun Media before and now with the Rebel Media. She has her finger on the pulse of what's going on in the country. So she will help us to do that in her speeches to us. We hope that at the end of the day that you will have discovered a lot of new friends here on the island who are your allies, who think like you do. We hope that you will feel supported. We hope that you will discover mutually agreed upon actions that we can take on Vancouver Island as we face current social issues. And we hope that this movement will spread across our nation and link together socially conservative organizations who are already much engaged in the fight. We have some of those organizations with us today, not as many as we had hoped, but we do have the We Need a Law people. Mike Shute, do you want to stand up? Thanks for coming, Mike. They've been valiantly fighting for an abortion law for a number of years. Just a couple days ago, we saw again what the liberal ideology does in our society. They don't play by the same moral rules as we do. And the Wilfrid Laurier Right to Life people, Wilfrid Laurier University down in Waterloo, had put out the display of flags that has been going across the nation. We Need a Law has been supportive of that, and they put up flags to represent every 10 abortions that took place in this country last year, and it took a lot of time to do that. They were engaging students who came to find out what was going on. In the midst of it, 10 pro-choice abortion protesters simply came in and trampled the flags and pulled them out, and the campus police stood there while it was going on. This is the kind of stuff that we are fighting in our society, and we really do need to develop tactics that are going to push back on this kind of stuff. We do have Dr. Philip Ney from Mount Joy College, and his organization has been fighting for socially conservative causes for a long time. Stand up, please, Philip. Philip's from Victoria, and he has a table back there.
69.
That's a long time. Sounds like a lot of us in this room. Thank you. And he has a table back there where his wife is sitting, and he has books and pamphlets that will help you as we go through this fight together. So, Faith is here someplace, is she?
I'm right here.
Oh, Faith, there you are. Bigger than life at the back of the room. There you go. Come on up.
morning.
Yeah, have you got your coffee?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Wonderful. Yeah. I was just sharing with them your trip out and some of the things that you've already experienced. Come on right up because you're going to be introduced, and we want to get this day going officially. But hopefully that gives you a bit of the history of the organization and where we want to go from here. And I hope that you're going to really find this day very, very helpful. We're so glad that Faith is with us. Some of you follow her on Rebel Media, and I've asked my friend Jeremy Smythe to introduce her.
Hello, my name is Jeremy Smythe, and I want to thank you all for being here this lovely Saturday morning. It's very encouraging, and I want to suggest to you all this is nothing less than a historic moment. Faith Goldy is a journalist and a conservative pundit. She first appeared on Crossroads Television at the age of 19 and has been immersed in the culture war in broadcast media ever since. Faith now works as an investigative reporter and commentator at Canada's Rebel Media and is regularly featured on several local and internationally syndicated radio programs. Faith was a reporter and commentator for Sun News, some of you may know, while her work has been featured in the Sun Media chain of newspapers and in the National Post. Faith is also the former co-host of The Zoomer with Lord Conrad Black, peer of the House of Lords, and a noted Canadian publisher and owner of newspapers. A graduate of the University of Toronto, Faith has followed and broken stories on several fronts, including parental rights in education, women's health and abortion, and then the slippery slope, most recently, of euthanasia in our nation. As a devout Catholic, Faith has a passion for capital T, truth, that spares nothing. Please join me, ladies and gentlemen, in welcoming her now, Faith Goldy.
Well, thank you all for being here. Thank you very much to Reed Ellie and to Jeremy and to my wonderful host family, Dr. Oscar's in the back over there, for being here today. I want to say that today I am not going to lecture you on all the reasons to be a social conservative. But your presence here on a Saturday morning tells me that you already know. We're now at a point in this fight where the facts are, oh, hey, nice to see you. You can see some familiar faces all the way on the other side of the country. It's nice. We know that the facts, the science are to our favor. I'm not going to sit here and give you a whole diatribe of reasons why abortion is bad. Euthanasia is indeed a slippery slope. We know most of that, and if you don't, there are a lot of resources out there for you. I know we have doctors and lawyers who can speak with great expertise on those subjects. My expertise is in the culture war. I'll be speaking twice today. The first one today, I want to give you a little bit of a lay of the land, where we are right now and how we got here. And then this afternoon we'll be talking about actionable points, what we need to do to move forward and see some success. A quick point on why I was called here and why I say my expertise is on the front lines of this culture war. I am one of the very few journalists in this country that is unabashedly a social conservative. I don't shy away from that. As such, I have really seen a host of the fronts now in this culture war over the past near decade, actually, that I've been reporting on them. I've studied unsavory sex ed curriculums across the country since about 2010 when they first started to pop up, and you think about where we are now just 6 years later and how crazy things have gotten. I've been the go-to media personality for parental scoops on sexual grooming and age-inappropriate sexual materials. Most famously, I covered a case of a grade 7-8 classroom in Toronto where graphic homosexual or instructions for homosexual acts were displayed for young children as young as 11 to witness. I'm currently writing a book on the making of sex ed curriculum across the country, and I was also the only journalist in the country who attended every court date of the Architects of Ontario's sex ed policy, and some of you will know that the chief architect therein is serving time behind bars right now for being convicted of child pornography, the making therein, as well as distributing and actually counseling a sexual assault. I'm not going to only talk to you about sex ed today, don't worry, but I have to say that the sex ed battle for me is not without purpose. Sex ed is the root of so many of the battle lines that we now see. We see a correlation with graphic sex ed curriculum, increased promiscuity at younger ages, which then gives way to increased abortion rates, as well as a devaluation of the institution of marriage due to these things. You know, have sex outside of marriage, it's all good, and hey, maybe you don't have to get married at all. As well as an increase in pornography. Right now, by the way, the average age of first exposure to pornography has dropped. It used to be 11, it's now 8. As well as growing gender dysphoria among our youth, as well as, of course, a devaluation of human life and dignity. Okay, so who are we as social conservatives? I'm big on definitions. I'm big on language. I think it's something that the left, the progressives, have been much more efficient at doing than we have been, and that is defining language and often redefining language. So if I may, I'd just like to say what social conservatism is to me. So who are we? After traveling across this country, I'd say that we are a group of people, largely from faith communities, of Christian faith, to be frank, although it's a dwindling number to a degree. Our values, quite simply, can be summed up as such. We hold traditional, pro-family positions on issues from social policy all the way to economic policy, which we don't give enough attention to, frankly. We view the family to be a fundamental building block to every society. So the healthier the families are, the healthier our societies will be. We acknowledge that objective morality does indeed exist. We believe all human beings were created, for lack of a better term, in the image of God. I think for me that's the most salient way of putting it. And therefore every human being is entitled to respect and dignity, and from that doctrine our love of freedom shines forth. In short, conservative values, social conservative values, are family values, and social conservative values used to be Canadian values. However, social conservative values today have become the new hate speech. To even criticize the new lifestyles and empty freedoms have become a hate punishable by imprisonment or by fine. Today, the authority that once resided with our families and our churches has gradually been usurped by the state, and this is a state that scoffs at traditional values. The old values, we're told, must go. Our children must become more advanced than their parents. While such an advancement includes, but is not limited to, the right to free abortion on demand, the right to refer to oneself as whatever gender they please, even if it doesn't correlate with their own biology, the right to end one's life when it no longer suits them, the evisceration of the rights of free speech and freedom of religion, and the evisceration of the sanctity of human life and marriage. This is the officialdom's thinking today. Just pardon me for a moment. All right, so how did we get here as a society? Simply put, we, social conservatives, for decades have not remained vigilant enough. And this has been, so our lack of vigilance has been happening as a correlating revolution, a long march revolution has been happening right underneath our nose. It's not because we didn't care. At a very practical level, for the past several decades, social conservatives have been raising families. They've been having a lot of kids. And for many of us in the room, we know what it's like to change diapers, to prepare lunches, to do the co-curriculars, to then visit the in-laws, and then report to your boss. This leaves very little time for us to hang out at the picket lines and make meaningful change in Ottawa or in our own provincial legislatures. The only problem is that while we, Christians and social conservatives, have been raising our families, there has been a group that has emerged, largely unmarried, childless revolutionaries, who had all the time in the world to achieve their goals. Looking back now, it's almost as though these revolutionaries, who were in it for the long game, by the way, very patient people, knew that we would not man the barricades to defend the old order, bequeathed to us by our ancestors and paid for over many generations, and they shed blood for it. And so our society became like frogs in a boiling pot, the temperature changing ever so slightly over time, but always in the direction of our own demise. Now, a caveat, I want to be very clear here about my own perspective. From where I am, again, often in the front lines of this culture war, As a Christian, I know that the gospel is good news. However, I also know that our spiritual history as God's children in Scripture and otherwise has involved no shortage of battles. As far as I'm concerned, this is a battle for souls, this culture war. It is a battle between good and evil. It is a battle between freedom and counterfeit freedom. At its core, which is slavery. Social conservatives, we are the only soldiers left on our side of this culture war. However, in order to fight this war, I'm of the belief that we need to know what our enemy is. So who is this enemy? Who are these revolutionaries that destroyed some of our most hallowed and critically essential principles upon which our entire society was founded? In a phrase, the enemy of what social conservatism seeks to preserve is cultural Marxism, today better known as social justice and progressivism. So I'm going to use all of those terms interchangeably, social justice, progressivism, and cultural Marxism. I want to quote Karl Marx before I go on. He said, "My object in this life is to dethrone God and destroy capitalism." Communists have never been very shy about their own end games. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. All right, Marxism, socialism, communism, these anti-family enemies are the enemies of the movement's past. But I regret to inform you, despite what you might think, socialism is so totally not dead. It's just in disguise and doing very, very well right here in North America, where Marxist magicians have gained total control of our culture. And outside of our movement, again, this oppression faces almost no opposition. Frankly, I think every politician should be talking to some of these Marxist magicians because their rebrand has been absolutely brilliant. The branding has turned a pro-statist, anti-family socialism into something so beautiful, progressivism. It sounds great, you want to be on board. Now, to be sure, not every social justice warrior progressive is a socialist or some maniacal pro-death cult creature bent on taking control of your family and your home. Many of them are just the useful idiots that Vladimir Lenin talked about. It's true. Social justice today, though, simply teaches the failed policies of yesterday's socialism. It's a replacement of true liberty with false freedoms, a degradation of morality and the importance of marriage, and the exaltation of practices like abortion. So why does the social justice warrior agenda matter to us as social conservatives? Because socialism, cultural Marxism, its goal is to destroy everything in its path, beginning with morality and the family unit, those very things that we as social conservatives seek to protect. The very thing that socialism is against, we want to preserve. But why do socialists want to destroy the family? Why do they want to destroy the church? Because morality and family, that is what keeps individuals strong. If you believe in the dignity of human life, you believe in their freedom, you believe in their free thought, you believe in the family unit as the ultimate social security net. When you start to remove all of that, all of a sudden you have a very, very different outcome. Socialism's goal is not big, but gigantic government, which can take things by force, including human life. Its death toll has been some 500 million, including abortions, just this past century alone. Destruction of the family and the value of human life is a necessary condition for the socialist vision of the good society to take place. For the cultural Marxists, the family unit is the ultimate roadblock to the statist movement. They want you to pick, is it going to be God or is it going to be government? To quote Joseph Stalin, America is like a healthy body, and its resistance is threefold. It's patriotism, that's why they rewrite our history, it's morality, and it's spiritual life. If we can undermine these three areas, America will collapse from within. And indeed, I think this applies to Canada as well. So if you don't mind, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to go through a little bit of our history to kind of, as the last portion of my morning's comments. I think our history and the cultural Marxist history really gives us a good perspective of how we got to where we are right now. The Marxist plan for North America, which we have seen unfolding largely since the 1960s, is actually very, very well documented. As I'm about to show you, their goals have become our movement's battle lines. In the eyes of the cultural Marxists, the family has always been the chief menace in the minds of many of its key influencers within Western socialist thought, namely the Fabian Socialist School, the Frankfurt School, and individuals like Antonio Gramsci and Saul Alinsky, who, in case you didn't know, actually dedicated his Rules for Radicals, which has been totally instrumental in so many of these leading cultural warriors on the other side. He dedicated that entire book to Lucifer as the very first radical. Again, they don't exactly hide their ambitions. Now, throughout their works, these Western Marxist movers and shakers, they shared a vision of an incremental cultural revolution, so incremental that people would not even realize it's happening. I think that's why sometimes we wake up and we're like, well, how did we get here? Well, because it's been happening under our nose for such a long time. It's a revolution that always targeted the family and religion by overloading education and the media. They wrote about undermining morals through music, literature, and art, infiltrating especially the youth, all the while employing highly effective divide and conquer methods through prejudice. Now, have any of you ever heard of the book, The Naked Communist? Yeah, okay. It's a fantastic book. Again, these Western Marxists, they lay everything out in several books, but for me, this is the most boiled down version of their goals. It's by an ex-FBI agent from the United States. He's a political theorist, W. Cleon Skousen. And if you want to talk about knowing thine enemy, this is the way to do it, okay? In this book, he lays out the entire progressive plan step by step. It was written in 1958, and I'm going to share with you just some of the many goals. And you tell me if any of this sounds familiar, okay? And remember, he's writing in 1958. This would have sounded totally crazy when he was writing it. And you tell me how he's doing. Discredit the family as an institution. Encourage promiscuity and easy divorce. I'd say they pretty much accomplished that. Eliminate prayer or any phase of religious expression in the schools on the ground that it violates the principle of separation of church and state. I think all systems are a go there. Dominate the psychiatric profession and use mental health laws as a means of gaining coercive control over those who oppose communist goals. We were talking about this a little bit in breakfast today. The left has become, the cultural Marxists, the progressives, have become so darn good at their job that they have actually co-opted the American Psychiatric Association. Canadian Medical Association now is under a huge amount of duress when it comes to euthanasia. The facts are with us, but they have now reached the point of their own side of the war where they are in positions of such power that they can actually alter and filter those facts. Another goal of theirs. Get control of the schools. Use them as transmission belts for propaganda, soften the curriculum, get control of teachers' associations. If you take the time to read any teacher association, any teacher union's actual manifesto and their declared goals, we're talking about like communism through and through. This is talk to us, we're the experts, forget your families. Another one, break down cultural standards of morality by promoting pornography and obscenity in books, magazines, motion pictures, radio, and TV. It's everywhere. It is absolutely everywhere. I mean, I don't want to bring up the Kardashians, but the Kardashians. Everywhere I turn, these people are promiscuous, they're wearing absolutely nothing, and they have become the leading cultural icons for our young children. Miley Cyrus, who we were talking about again earlier today, this is a woman who describes herself as, quote, pansexual. I make the joke, are you into pans? No, it means that all sorts of sexuality apply to her. These, again, are the role models for our teachers in television and popular culture. Present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as, quote, normal, natural, and healthy. Very successful on that front. And by the way, the objective of normalizing homosexuality was so crucial for these progressives, for these cultural Marxists as they once called themselves, because if they could dismantle the very founding and age-old institutions within the oldest institution, family, motherhood and fatherhood, and warp that, all of a sudden, it's a totally different ballgame. Infiltrate the press. Get control of book review assignments, editorial writing, policy-making positions. These guys were specific. Look at the press today. If you talk about any sort of social concern, who followed the Vancouver conservative, what the heck was it called? Their big annual meeting that they had. Thank you very much. The social conservative stories, they were all spun in the media. Like, look at these knuckle-dragging, cavemen. Another one, gain control of key positions on radio, TV, and motion pictures. We see that. Gain control of all student newspapers, and I'm going to be talking a lot more about the schools in my second talk later on today. The schools, the student newspapers. When I was in school, I graduated university in 2012. It's now 2016. It's only been 4 years. I remember the student newspapers and the student unions were the hotbeds of cultural Marxism. But I still felt that as a conservative, as a Christian, I could still express my points, though I'd usually just, be told, you're wrong, even by my professors. Now the culture on those campuses has just been brought up to DEFCON level 1. You're no longer, they will blast white noise off of you, they will force you to apologize as a professor, they will ask for your tenure to be removed, and tenure is the only thing that's going to save you, frankly, as a professor today. And as a student, you're a bigot, and that's that. Infiltrate the churches and replace revealed religion with, quote, social religion. Here, I don't want to bad talk our churches too much, but I will say there's a little bit too much talk about green energy and this sort of climate stuff when they should be focusing on our Lord and Savior and the morality that comes from the gospel. All right, so this again was 1958. All of this sounds like an absolute pipe dream, totally crazy, and then here we are, 50 years later. I should mention that women were not off the cultural Marxist radar. The Communist Party USA devised a plan to exploit the feminist movement, aided by books like The Feminine Mystique. They sought to apply a lens of victimhood before the gaze of everyday American stay-at-home moms, who, by the way, by my measure, are the most blessed and fortunate people on the face of the planet. You get to spend time with your kids, you get to look after your family household, so that way, your husband can go and provide for the family, and your children become amazing parts of our country's future. Instead, feminism under the direction of cultural Marxists told married stay-at-home mothers that they were the victims of outdated patriarchy, and it was time to free herself from her shackles. And the way to free herself from those shackles was to be single, without children, even if that meant using abortion as birth control, and enter the workplace, where, for the record, she has now become the loneliest and least fulfilled she's ever been, according to recent stat numbers. In sum, what these Western radicals wanted was something totally unimaginable at the time in which they theorized. A discrete, divide and conquer movement which undermines family and church, the feminine mystique. They sought to apply a lens of victimhood before the gaze of everyday American stay-at-home moms, who, by the way, by my measure, are the most blessed and fortunate people on the face of the planet. You get to spend time with your kids, you get to look after your family household, so that way, your husband can go and provide for the family, and your children become amazing parts of our country's future. Instead, feminism under the direction of cultural Marxists told married stay-at-home mothers that they were the victims of outdated patriarchy, and it was time to free herself from her shackles. And the way to free herself from those shackles was to be single, without children, even if that meant using abortion as birth control, and enter the workplace, where, for the record, she has now become the loneliest and least fulfilled she's ever been, according to recent stat numbers. In sum, what these Western radicals wanted was something totally unimaginable at the time in which they theorized. A discrete, divide and conquer movement which undermines family and church, while exploiting education, politics, and popular culture, as well as feminism, transforming every man, woman, and child into victims for statist advantage. And yet, so much of their vision has been achieved. Today, authority is being snatched from the home and from the church, given instead to the all-powerful state, while the state has no interest in preserving morality, because it is that morality of the worth of every single human being that leads one to believe in freedom, the exact opposite of what these radicals want for their powerful state. In conclusion, the next time you turn on your TV or read your newspaper and ask, how did we get here? It's the minions of the evil one who were patient. They developed enough to stop them. But I think that's all about to change. Before there's a tidal wave and the water's about to go all the way up onto the shore, there's a retraction. And when that retraction happens, you see all the garbage that's scattered before the big wave comes. And I think right now we're in this part of society where the water's retreating and we see the garbage on the ground. And that some of us who know it's garbage are more obliged than ever to point that out before the big tsunami actually does occur. We are now the new counterculture, more than ever. There is an appetite for change from a silent majority who just need a vehicle for that change, which is, at its core, a return to what once was.